So it feels like just the other day I was sitting here talking about Tom Holland's exit from the MCU, the end of Spider-Man's time with the Avengers, just sitting here sad because it was a really cold thought. The idea of the MCU moving forward without Spider-Man, Peter Parker just suddenly, abruptly being snapped away from the MCU and the Avengers, never making mention of his name again. Thankfully though, not even a month later, I don't even know how long ago it was in August, we now have the news that Sony and Disney reached a new deal September 26th, Thursday night, and then yesterday, September 27th, we got the news that Tom Holland is returning for Spider-Man 3 in the MCU on July 16th, 2021. And on top of that, a separate, untitled Marvel Studios movie, which is probably going to be the next Avengers movie, whatever that might be, or maybe Fantastic Four, who the hell knows, honestly, but that's so awesome, man, because obviously we now have Tom Holland as Spider-Man back in the MCU, and listen, man, it was looking a little uncertain there for a while, and it just was really upsetting. I bought the Hot Toys figure because I was like, well, I was going to get this figure anyway, but now I really have incentive. But seriously, I was just really bummed out, man, at the thought of Sony taking Tom Holland, the perfect actor to play Spider-Man, the greatest actor who has ever played Spider-Man, and the only actor alive, honestly, who can play Spider-Man right now. And the idea of Sony pulling him out of the MCU so abruptly and then just putting him in their own separate movies, just indirectly implying the events of the previous MCU movies, never getting to meet up with Happy Hogan, it was just a terrible thought, and I'm just so glad that they reached a new deal. I didn't expect it to be this soon, which is so awesome. But Kevin Feige released a statement and said, "I am thrilled that Spidey's journey in the MCU will continue, and I and all of us at Marvel Studios are very excited that we get to keep working on it." Feige said, Spider-Man is a powerful icon and a hero whose story crosses all ages and audiences around the globe. He also happens to be the only hero with the superpower to cross cinematic universes. So as Sony continues to develop their own Spideyverse, you never know what surprises the future might hold. And wow, that's quite a statement. He pretty much just directly confirmed, almost. Not necessarily directly, that's a little strong phrasing on my part, but he also happens to be the only hero with the superpower to cross cinematic universes. I don't know what else that pretty much right there is confirmation that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is also going to appear in separate Sony movies. He literally just referred to it as Sony's own Spideyverse, rather. And that's, listen, man, that's a lot of, I don't care what Sony, listen, man, I'm at the point where I'm just so happy that Tom Holland is back in the MCU. I don't care if Sony also pulls him back to do some separate Sony Spider-Verse movies off to the side that aren't necessarily in continuity with the MCU, or are just loosely in continuity with the MCU and only have very light mentions of the MCU. I don't care. We've got Tom Holland back in the MCU for one more Spider-Man movie and another untitled Marvel Studios movie. So that means that they've got more than enough time now to basically do an Iron Man 3 style ending, which I think is necessary. Because if you remember at the end of Iron Man 3, it was many years ago, so some of you may not remember, but we didn't know if Robert Downey Jr. was going to sign on for anything past Marvel Phase 2. So basically, past Iron Man 3. And so we didn't know if he was going to come in to do Age of Ultron and anything past Iron Man 3. So they had him do that whole scene where he was like, you can take away my house, all my tricks and toys, but one thing you can't take away, I am Iron Man, so my journey reaches its end, whatever. And I think that's what they need to do with Spider-Man 3. So it's a serviceable ending, not the ending, not the conclusion, but a conclusion, a bookend. Just something that isn't a massive plot twist post-credit scene that goes unresolved in the universe that it originally took place in. So I really hope that they do at least something like that to kind of cover themselves in case this happens again, because it almost certainly will after Spider-Man 3 and whatever this untitled Marvel Studios movie is going to be that he'll appear in after that. But on top of that, Amy Pascal did also say, this is terrific. Peter Parker's story took a dramatic turn in Far From Home, and I could not be happier. We will all be working together as we see where his journey goes. So, yeah, I mean, Amy Pascal, that's great to hear. And also, Robert Lawson, who is Sony's Chief Communications Officer for Sony Pictures anyway, he said that we have had a great collaboration over the last 4 years, and our mutual desire to continue was equal to that of the many fans. We are delighted to be moving forward together, so that's great. Now, yeah, this is kind of crazy because we just got a massive amount of information. I assume John Watts will come in to finish off his trilogy and direct Spider-Man 3. I assume that's pretty much a no-brainer. But then this brings us to the question. Okay, now we've got Spider-Man 3, officially, you know, Tom Holland back in the MCU, also going to do another separate Marvel movie, seemingly an ensemble, and apparently Sony's also going to be doing their own Spideyverse movies. I mean, Kevin Feige pretty much just said that he's the only one with the ability to cross cinematic universes. Maybe that implies that Tom Holland Spider-Man will link up with Venom. Maybe Venom will be allowed entry into the MCU. Who the hell knows? We really don't have any of those details confirmed yet. What we did get confirmed was Tom Holland rejoining the MCU, Spider-Man 3 in the MCU, and this untitled Marvel Studios movie that he'll also be appearing in. So basically the deal was, apparently, this is also not confirmed, I don't think, that Sony finally caved and gave Disney the 25% that they were originally asking for, and that apparently Disney was never really asking for 50% of the movie gross to begin with. It was always just the 25%, but none of that is confirmed. Either way, though, if that is true, that would mean that Sony is getting 75% of the movie revenue, and then Disney taking 25%, but also all of the merchandising rights. So, like, all the merchandising revenue, and it's like, that's a lot of money that Sony's not getting, and I mean, you can do with that what you will. I'm just, again, happy that that this is happening. I know that Disney kind of has a monopoly on everything, and it is a little scary, and maybe Sony isn't getting the greatest deal here. But again, I am just so happy that the deal was made anyway, because we as the fans are the winners here. But also, we as the fans might have been the ones manipulated here, because obviously a big thing circulating now is, okay, was all of this just a publicity stunt? Was all of this just leaked to the public for Disney to gain leverage over Sony, or for Sony to attempt to gain leverage over Disney? Were Disney and Sony just renegotiating as planned after Far From Home? We already knew this was going to happen, and they were just doing it behind the scenes, and then it got out, so they decided to make something of it to see how big the demand for MCU Spidey really is going to be moving forward. And who the hell knows, right? We don't know. We will probably never know, but it certainly is not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, it certainly to me seems at least somewhat likely. It would be a shame if that were the case, but it's not like we haven't seen anything like that done before. I would argue that's certainly not on the scale necessarily, but I mean, that would be a shame. It really would, if all of this was just a big machination, you know, on their part, whoever's part, Disney or Sony or both. But again, after the threat of the definitive on-screen Spider-Man being ripped away from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then the threat looming over of it being ruined, you know, I'm just so glad that we can now rest easy knowing that Marvel Studios and Sony will have the opportunity to do a soft ending for Peter Parker's time in the MCU, and they're putting him in another movie after that for the MCU. So the point is, I'm just so glad this is happening. I'm just so glad that this got rectified even faster than any of us were expecting. One last thing, though, is obviously they can take Sony, Sony and Marvel, they can take Tom Holland's Spider-Man so much further, right? I mean, you don't want to just have Spider-Man's story cut off after high school. But I mean, at the same time, if say this happens again and they renegotiate and next time it's worse and he does actually get pulled from the MCU, they'll renegotiate again, and at least we will have had some kind of soft ending that we can kind of sit on that would maybe explain why Peter isn't in the next phase of Marvel movies. I'm just purely speculating here, but I'm just saying, man, the end of Spider-Man 3 or the end of whatever this untitled Marvel movie is going to be that he'll also appear in after that, they need to do some kind of soft ending for Peter's story to cover their asses just in case, because as much as I want to see the most, made out of, I want them to make the most out of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and obviously that would include, doing Oscorp and the Osborns and Sinister Six and Kraven and his time in college and beyond college and all of that stuff. Everything that you can do with Spider-Man, obviously we all want to see done on screen, but in the event they can't, or in the event that it won't happen, they really got to do a soft ending with Spider-Man 3 or this untitled Marvel movie. So those are my thoughts. Tom Holland Spider-Man is back in the MCU. I'm tired. Thank you, God. All right, I'm done.